Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome to an action figure review that isn't a movie Monster Series figure for once. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Jurassic World Legacy Collection Reimagined Raorin Real Feel Carnotaurus. Now, for context, I am a huge fan of Kenner's Jurassic Park toy line. It is easily my favorite toy line of all time. I absolutely love it. It's not accurate to the movie. Kenner definitely took some artistic liberties with making these figures, but the original Jurassic Park toy line just has this vibe to it that I can't explain. It just feels magical to me. And it's the kind of magic that not a lot of other toy companies can capture. Mattel has kind of gotten close a little bit, but Kenner's original Jurassic Park toy line was iconic, and I absolutely love it. The Lost Worlds toy line was very good too, but, well, it was done by Kenner, so of course it's going to be good. But with the Jurassic Park toy line, they were still, figuring out, designs for the dinosaurs and, the characters and all that. And I don't know, it just has this vibe that just really resonates with me. I absolutely love Kenner's Jurassic Park toy line. Now, let's go back to 2016. I was a freshman in high school at this point, which, Jesus, I'm getting old. Anyway, this is when I started collecting Kenner's Jurassic Park figures. Every Sunday, I'd go to the Sunday flea market with my dad in hopes of finding some. Some days I'd be lucky, other days, not so much. But one figure that I always wanted to find, whether it was at the flea market or not, I always wanted the Jurassic Park Series 2 Demon Carnotaurus. This figure was a holy grail piece for my collection because, A, Carnotaurus was my favorite dinosaur. It still is, but that's besides the point. B, the colors looked sick. The red and black looked so cool, and I just thought it looked amazing. And I knew I wanted this figure because, again, Carnotaurus and the colors looked great. But the other thing that I really was fascinated by was the price of this thing, because the Demon Carnotaurus is a very rare figure and hard to come by at the time. It still is now, but at the time, it was very rare and very expensive. Listings at the time I'd see go for like $200, $300, out of the box with all of its accessories. And I've even seen a listing for $900, mint in the box. This was not a cheap figure at all. And I didn't have a job at this point. The only money I had in my pocket, at most, was a $20 bill, and that's it. So the dream of me getting this figure, it was looking pretty slim, I'm not gonna lie. But that Christmas, I got enough money, and I found a listing that had all the accessories, and I bought it. And this is 2017. I was a sophomore in high school at this point, but I ordered it on eBay, and I was at my dad's that weekend, so I had to wait. But eventually, I got home, I opened it up, and I was so happy. This figure that I have been wanting for so long is finally in my hands, and it felt great. Now, last year was Jurassic Park's 30th anniversary, and while Mattel doesn't own the rights to those molds, so they can't really re-release those figures in a special 30th anniversary line or anything like that, Mattel went ahead and made their own 93 Classics line, including the electronic T-Rex based on the original Red Rex, which I reviewed last year, human characters based on their original Kenner designs, and vehicles based on, I think, a scrapped design? I could be wrong. But, yeah, Mattel had a 93 Classics line based on, or inspired by, Kenner's Jurassic Park toy line. And immediately after they announced that line, I thought, they are definitely going to do a Demon Carnotaurus. They didn't at first, and I was a little disappointed. And even when they brought the line back, this year, they did that Dennis Nedry set. But I was expecting that to be the Demon Carnotaurus. It wasn't. And I was pretty disappointed. But the Legacy Collection pulled through. They gave us the Reimagined line, and the first figure they gave was a Carnotaurus figure inspired by that original Demon Carnotaurus figure. I was ecstatic. That was a day one pre-order. And yeah, here we are. So, at the end of the day, is it better than the Demon Carnotaurus? Or is the original still the best? Well, let's take a closer look. Starting with the paint, and for the most part, the painting on this figure captures the likeness of the demon Carnotaurus beautifully, so let's take a closer look. Now, first of all, this red and black color scheme looks great here. Like, this is such an iconic color scheme for this dinosaur. It's crazy. And the fact that it's on a Mattel figure makes me very happy. So I do like this a lot. Unfortunately, I will say, the red just kind of stops here, and the rest of the tail is just, unpainted, which is very unfortunate. The original Demon Carnotaurus had paint going all the way to the end of the tail here, but this figure just kind of stops here. This is a problem that Mattel's had for a while now, so I'm not too upset by this, but at the same time, it's still worth pointing out. The toenails here are painted a nice grayish coloration, which looks pretty similar to the Demon Carnotaurus as well. Unfortunately, the dew claws will not be painted, but the original didn't have painted dew claws either, so I'm not upset by this either. Going to the arms of Carnotaurus, they will be unpainted, which is fine because Carnotaurus in real life actually didn't have fingernails, so I'm totally okay with how the arms look. Going to the head here, we can see that the eyes are painted green with black pupils. The teeth here are painted a nice yellowish whitish coloration, which I think looks great. And the inside of the mouth here is painted this nice salmon pink, which again looks nice. Now for the underside. Now, the underside of the figure, the original Demon Carnotaurus, we had this grayish-whitish coloration going from the underside here all the way to the end of the tail here. But on this figure, it's just in this spot specifically, which is very unfortunate. Not only was it all the way to the end of the tail here, but it was also on the legs, which looked really nice on that figure. But here, it's just in one spot. And the rest of the underside here just, unfortunately, looks very bare and very empty, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but it's Mattel. This is nothing new, so it is what it is. On the underside, we have the Jurassic World or Jurassic Park logo here. And lastly, we have the scan code right here. And again, this is a nice homage to the Dino Damage from the original, Kenner toy line. The Demon Carnotaurus had this feature too. Like on the tail here, there's like a piece of skin you could remove. So it is really cool that, that's also on this figure as well. So, yeah. And that's pretty much it for the painting on this figure. And overall, it's not perfect. There are some things I would have done differently. I would have added some more red and white in certain points, but overall, it does look very close to the original Demon Carnotaurus. My personal copy, the red is a little more faded than this figure, so there's a little bit of a difference, but besides that, it looks good. So the painting on this figure, I'd say gets 3/4 of a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the articulation, and the articulation on this figure is not bad. It's a step up from the original Demon Carnotaurus, might I add, so let's take a closer look. So as we can see, first of all, the arms here can move 360 and move outwards like so. And the legs here can kick forward about that far and backwards about that far. The legs are also on ratchet joints, so it's really, I appreciate it a lot because it's easier to stand this figure. And just like the original Demon Carnotaurus, this figure, it's the Raorin Real Feel Carnotaurus, so the main body of this figure is going to be made of rubber, which I think is really cool. I really do like this feature, but unfortunately, one thing that I do miss from the original Demon Carnotaurus is that the mouth was like kind of closed a little bit, and the gimmick was like you push the neck and it like opens, so you have this like chomping action, which is not here on this figure. Instead, the mouth is just always open, which doesn't look bad, but I would have preferred this figure being displayed with like the mouth closed or something like that. I'm okay with this, but again, it would have been nicer if there was at least a way to close the mouth. But one thing I will say that's an upgrade from the original Demon Carnotaurus is that this figure is actually electronic, where the original wasn't. And this figure comes with 4 sounds, so let's listen to them. So here's the first one. That's the first one. Now for the second one. The third one. And the fourth one. And that's pretty much it. And I like that, There are sounds from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, But still, it makes sense because, the Carnotaurus was in that movie. But still, this is a really nice touch. I do like it a lot. It adds more to this figure. So I do like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the articulation on this figure. And the articulation on this figure, well, actually this opens up, but I talked about that before. But overall, the articulation on this figure is good. I'd say it's a step up from the original Demon Carnotaurus, though again, I do miss that chomp action that the original figure had. So, as is, I'm going to give the articulation here 3/4 of a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the sculpt. And the sculpting on this figure, for the most part, I think looks great. There is just one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of, and that's the length of the tail. Now, this is a problem that Mattel's been having for a while now, but unfortunately, it hasn't gotten any better, and the tail on this figure, I think, could have been a little longer. It doesn't look terrible, but I would have preferred if it was more like up to here. I think that looked nicer. Granted, the original Demon Carnotaurus had a very short tail too, which looked pretty disproportionate to the rest of the body, but still, this would have been a perfect opportunity for Mattel to improve upon that original sculpt, but unfortunately, they didn't. Besides that, the sculpting here, I think, looks great. It would have been nice if the horns were pointing more downwards rather than, how they are now. But again, the only real issue I have is the length of the tail. Overall, the sculpting here, I think, looks good. The feet aren't too big or anything like that. Overall, the sculpting here is great. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that the sculpting on this figure looks better than the original Demon Carnotaurus. I love that figure to death, but well, this is just like the design here. It's just the model from Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which I really like that design. So it's nice that they took that model and, gave it the Demon Carnotaurus color scheme. I think that's great. So, yeah, sculpting on this figure, besides the tail, I'd say is great. So the sculpting on this figure, I'd say gets 3/4 of a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the detailing, and the detailing on this figure I think looks very good, so let's take a closer look at that. So starting off at the head here, all of the scales and all of the ridges in the face here are detailed very nicely. Everything here is very nicely defined, and overall just looks great. And even the neck here, all of these little wrinkles and whatnot are detailed very nicely. And we do get that consistent scaling throughout the figure. All of the little osteoderms on the back of this figure I think look great. And all of the creases and wrinkles in the skin on the side here, it just looks great. Very well defined. And even some nice detailing in the arms here. The scaling looks nice, and there's some nice musculature here too. So yeah, a lot of nice detailing here. Going to the little scan code bit here, we can see that they actually detailed some muscle here, which is actually really cool. I appreciate that, It would have been nice if it was painted like a pinkish coloration, but still they detailed it, so that's fine enough. It's going to be covered anyway, so there's no real point to it, but I digress. Anyway, the legs have a lot of really nice musculature here. All the scaling and everything is detailed very nicely, and all the wrinkles and the knees and everything. And again, there's a lot of really nice detailing here. It looks great. Going to the tail here, again, just a lot of really nice scaling here. All the creases and all the wrinkles and everything are detailed very nicely. Everything is very nicely defined. And the underside of the figure here has a lot of really nice detailing as well. Again, just more wrinkles and scaling and everything like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the detailing on this figure. And overall, the detailing here, I think, looks great. So the detailing on this figure, I'd say definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll do some size comparisons. To start, here we have the 1993 Classics T-Rex. This is the Red Rex-inspired figure that Mattel did last year for Jurassic Park's 30th anniversary. And I don't like the scaling here. Carnotaurus here is way too big, and Carnotaurus was a big dinosaur. By no means was it small. It was a good size, but it wasn't T-Rex size. So the fact that Mattel keeps making their Carnotaur figures the same height as their T-Rex figures, I don't know. It's a little annoying. This has been a problem since, they first started doing Jurassic figures, so this is nothing new, but it's still frustrating nonetheless. But I digress. Here we have the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus. Now, just imagine for a second. I know we just got this guy, and I'm happy for this guy, but just imagine. I know Mattel wouldn't do this, but just imagine for a second that they made a repaint of this figure that looked closer to the original Demon Carnotaurus, you know? And I mean, like, having red paint go to the end of the tail here, and, like, you know, white paint going on to the end of the tail here, and just, like, this level of quality, you know, that this figure has. Like, that'd be nice. I think that would look really good, but I digress. Anyway, that's the Hammond Collection Carnotaurus. Here we have the original Kenner, Dr. Snare, along with the baby Carnotaurus he comes with, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Of course, you knew I had to bring in the original Demon Carnotaurus, right? There's just no way that I couldn't. And yes, this is the same Carnotaurus I had since I was a sophomore in high school. Now, between the two, which one do I prefer? I will say I like the sculpting on this figure more. You know, it looks more realistic, and it can actually stand on its own, whereas this figure here, it needs some support at the feet in order to stand. So I do like the sculpting here, but this figure, well, the paint quality here, like, even though, like, this is a 30-year-old figure, so of course, like, the paint is gonna, like, be worn out a little bit, but overall, like, the paint quality here is better, and overall, just, the overall quality here looks better, and this figure just has a charm to it, where, again, the sculpting, it's a little goofy, you know, like, those are some pretty big teeth, don't get me wrong, but the sculpt, like, overall, this figure just has, like, it just has magic that this figure just can't capture, you know? And, like, the same with, like, the entirety of, like, the original Kenner Jurassic Park toy line, like, just the overall vibe that that toy line had, like, I don't think it can be matched. Like, whether it's accurate or not, like, the Kenner stuff will always be my favorite, you know? Mattel isn't horrible, you know? Some of their figures are not the best, but some of them are quite nice, and this figure is quite nice, but, again, as far as, like, Jurassic Park toy lines go, Kenner will always be on top for me. And as far as these two figures specifically, again, the Demon Carnotaurus here, this original Kenner figure will always be one of my favorite Jurassic Park figures, but I digress. Anyway, of course, here we have Dr. Billy Grant, and here we have some hand sanitizer. Again, not a big fan of the scaling here. I think the Carnotaurus should be a little smaller, but I digress. So at the end of the day, should you get this figure? There are some things that I would have done differently, but overall, I do really like this figure. I think the painting looks nice, I think the sculpting looks nice, and there's a lot of play value here too. You know, I think the real feel skin is great, but also new electronic features that were absent on the original Demon Carnotaurus I think are a nice addition to this figure. So whether you're buying this for your collector needs or you're buying this for a kid, either way, I think everybody will be happy with this figure. So I do recommend that you pick this figure up. Now, this figure is a Target exclusive as far as here in the States go. I'm not sure how the international distribution of this figure works. I'm not sure where you get this figure, you know, if you aren't in America. But if you are in America, then this figure is a Target exclusive. And as far as price tags go, this figure is about $35, which I'd say is a pretty fair asking price, you know, because there's a lot here. Like, the quality is nice, like, the painting looks nice, the sculpting looks nice, but again, there's also just a lot of really nice play value here that I think children will love too. So, again, whether you're a collector or you're a kid, I think you're going to really like this figure. So, either way, at the end of the day, I do highly recommend that you pick this figure up. Anyway, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zack out.